Ladies and gentlemen and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Transition Tuesday. My name is Amanda Bonanza. That lovely lady next to me is Lilith Elektra, and we are going to discuss questions that the world gave us. I've got a question today. Lilith, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing great. That's right. Okay, it was a fresh show.
It's a fresh show. It's fresh.
Great. It's been fabulous.
Really? Tell me more.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just assuming that by the time you edit this and it airs, things will be going fabulous. Right now, life's whatever.
That's a real glass is half full kind of look. And that's what we're all about here at Transition Tuesday is that positivity, get you going, give you a reason to get out of bed. We got a question. You want to hear a question?
I'm going to do you one better. I'm not just going to hear it. I'm going to help answer it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So this question comes to us from Evelina Paula. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And she asks, as a trans woman, do you wish you had lived in an earlier era, like the 80s and 90s, or are you cool with today's world?
First of all, this question came from the live chat during the thing. So if you're watching this recorded, like on a Tuesday, you can come join the live chat and just hit us up right here.
That is true. That is true.
So, like the 1980s?
I assume so. Like, I mean the 1680s. I'm glad I'm not a trans woman in the 1680s.
Oh, fuck no. I think I'd be at my height as like a transgender pirate in like the days of pirates. I'm
a landlubber, so I just assumed I'd get burned at the stake.
Oh no, I'd for sure.
You'd be a seafaring wench, you say.
The pirate queen of the Rock of Gibraltar. I don't know where I'd be. The pirate queen of the Atlantic. Who knows?
Yeah, because you wouldn't have been in Detroit probably in the 1680s. Because a lot of this is like, okay, if we're time traveling, we need to address some time travel issues.
Two things. Do I wish I could have transitioned in the 80s? Heck yeah. I wish I could have. I wish puberty blockers would have been a thing. I wish I could have avoided the wrong puberty and done all that. Like, yes, I wish I had done that. Was that the best time to be a 16-year-old going through a transition? I don't know if it would have been the most physically safe, because even adults who were transitioning, it wasn't something that a lot of people did or that was common or anything like that. But if you're asking me if I wish I could have transitioned in the 80s, yes. I'd rather be 16 now and transitioning than 16 in 1986 and transitioning then. Obviously, the longer you wait, the medicine's better, what they can do for you is better, the techniques for if you're going to have any surgeries are better. So yeah, I wish I could have transitioned when I was 16, but part of my journey, and if you're a long-time watcher, I always say this, I can't change the past. I'm going to do the best with where I'm at, and what I'm doing in life is pretty good, so I'm not going to complain about that. But would I have wanted to transition when I was younger? Yes. In the 80s, oh man, I don't know, 80s in Milwaukee, not a great time to be queer.
No, it wasn't. It was not. It was not a good time. I am going to ascertain that what she's actually asking is, not would you have rather transitioned younger? Like your circumstances are the same, but you transition. You just happen to
right.
To
and
be
for
in
that
era.
For that, I would say 90s yes, 80s probably not.
I would say neither. I think actually right now is probably the best time. Like it's better than it's ever been. And yeah, there's a lot of ugliness from the J.K. Rowlings of the world and the Donald Trumps of the world and the right wingers of the world. But if you think that shit wasn't there in the 80s and the 90s, it absolutely was, except it was way worse.
If it was just little old me transitioning in 1996, none of those people give a shit about that. I arrive now and I'm like, no one even knows.
I don't understand.
So right now, everyone's focused on it. And
oh yeah,
it's here. If I did in the 90s, nationally, politically, no one cares. I'm just going about doing my business. I'm peeing where I want. I'm playing on the soccer team, and no one really cares.
Yeah, that is kind of maybe true. I think I don't know. That's assumptive. That's assumptive that no one would care. I mean, people if you look at back in the 80s, there was the satanic panic, and they charged teenagers for murder because they played Dungeons and Dragons. They were crazy back then.
Dungeons and Dragons.
If you were goth, you got in trouble back then. There were aspects of it, in the 90s, maybe, because the 90s were a weird, there was transphobia and there was homophobia in the 90s for sure, but it was it was kind of like a 60s revival, and everyone was fucking tripping balls, and like, it was a wild time. It was a lot of LSD and a lot of smoking pot and a lot of ecstasy, and it was a lot of go with the flow.
I was such a dork in the days. I had no idea.
Oh, I was gobbling acid like every weekend.
I wasn't that cool, and then I married like a stuck-up dork. That was like exponentially made everything weirder and harder to get into.
That's a hilarious thing that you just said about your ex-wife, and I love it.
I still want to revisit this 16 or 15 80s.
Like, yeah, let's go way back, the 1880s.
In fact, I think I AI'd somewhere a short story about me as a pirate in that time period.
Oh yeah, you got that?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Oh, I don't know where it is. I'd have to.
Oh, I thought you just did that just now.
No, I didn't do that just now. I'm not that good.
I mean, you could be a transgender pirate now. Like, there's still pirates. Like, you could do that.
But now it's the same thing. Now everyone's focused on pirates. Like, they like.
No one's focused. What are you talking about?
Are you
pirates
kidding?
are way under the radar. Who's talking about pirates?
Any shipping vessel that goes past the coast of Africa has like a whole thing. Like, if pirates show up, they like.
Yeah, that's true. They're ready.
Yeah, they're ready for pirates.
There's just a Tom Hanks movie about that exact thing. Actually, on Netflix.
So yeah, I think being a pirate is much harder now.
It's so hard to make statements like that. I've studied history. I do study history. It's a part of my thing. I know a lot about it. And from a historian perspective, from a historical perspective, the past is bad. Like, it's always worse the farther back you go. If you think about like how the transgender situation is now, up until 2015, if was really the point at which like it was starting to come into the collective consciousness and was a force in the zeitgeist. Before then, no one was going to respect your pronouns. No one was going to let you in the wrong path. No, that's not true.
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong.
No, I know I'm not, because I am in a group with a woman that transitioned in the 80s in San Francisco, of all places, and she had a fucking rough go of it. And she's got massive trauma from it.
I'm saying, like, if I'm where I'm at now, and I moved to Detroit and I don't tell anyone I'm trans, I feel like I'd have no problem in the 90s just being me.
You don't know. It's a hypothetical situation. I'm just saying, I know, but I'm addressing it as best I can, but I'm just saying, like, this is a thing that people do. We tend to look into the future and feel anxiety, and we tend to look to the past and we romanticize everything, and we forget all the boring things and all the bad things that happened and all the way things were shitty. And like, you look back and you look at the 60s and you're like, oh, peace and love, free love, and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and like the Doors, and like, yeah, party, and everyone was having a high, and hippies. And it's like, and that's not what the 60s were like. The 60s were a terrible time to be alive. It was horrible. Like, the civil rights movement was violent and scary, and politics were violent and scary. Presidents and presidential candidates were getting shot in the head. Like, it was.
But none of this has to do with me being a pirate.
But what I'm saying is, is you can say, hey, I would rather be trans in the 1980s, or let's even say the 1990s, which I think were categorically better than the 80s. But like, I think it's a mistake, because like, I remember, like, if you want a perspective on how people thought about trans people in the 90s, just watch any movie from the 90s, because it's a joke.
I just want to interject here that originally my answer was, I would want to transition now. And
that's true.
The 80s and 90s would mean I just transitioned younger, which I would have preferred, but obviously we're living in the time.
Right.
And then my secondary answer was, I'd want to be a pirate. And actually, pirate is moving down to third. I would actually rather be at one of those time periods where like trans people are just like accepted as partial gods among us.
And, in a culture and a time where like,
I would be.
We're trans women. We're shaman.
I would live at
we're revered.
Edge of the city, and I'd make potions, and people would tell their kids to leave me alone because I should be left alone. And I'd
ancient Egypt. Yeah, sounds
my
good.
18 cats.
Yeah, I accept that.
Okay. I just want to remind you, I felt like I was getting a talking to.
Well, I'm trying to address the question from like a semi-pragmatic point of view. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm being assumptive. And I'm assuming that our question asker is kind of asking that because they maybe themselves feel like this is a shitty time to be trans and it's hard. And maybe it was better in the past. And there's certain indicators of that. Like there was a movie in the 90s called To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and it starred Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo as three drag queens that like drove through the Bible Belt and like went on an adventure, like in full drag.
And no movie theaters were burned down.
Right. People weren't like getting outraged. There weren't the Ben Shapiros of the world going, this has got to be blah, 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 blah. The woke Hollywood elite, blah, 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 blah.
That was a spot on impersonation.
There wasn't any of that. It was just a movie people went to see and enjoyed it. And it wasn't like the best movie ever, but it was fun, you know? It's like, I remember it. And like, you couldn't make that movie now. Like, I mean, you could and you should, but like, there would be a lot of yelling about it. And so I could see like how someone growing up now and only knowing what it's like now, and it's no question, it's a scary time. There's a giant sword of Damocles hanging over with this election. Like, at least, you know, it's like we don't know how this is going to go, and it might go really bad for all of us, and we'll find out. Like, I vote, fucking register, do it now. It's always been hard for us, and we've always been a marginalized community pretty much forever, but it's better now in the sense in that, like Lilith said, the medicine's better. The treatment's way easier to get. Like, you can get the surgeries. Sometimes your insurance will cover the cost of it. Like that wasn't the case in the 90s or the 80s. You had to do that all out of pocket. So good luck, you know, and there weren't workplace protections. There weren't any of that. There was no state law that said you were allowed to use the bathroom of your identity. Like those things weren't there. It just wasn't at all. And forget anyone ever gendering you correctly. Like, they would misgender you incorrectly and on purpose. And if you spoke up about it, you would get in trouble. Like, so no, it wasn't a better time to be trans. Now is a way better time to be trans.
You wrapping up?
I'm gonna wrap that up.
If you got one more thing, you should say it.
Well, I do have one more thing. The reason that all that backlash is coming is because it got so much better so fast. In the last 10 years, it has gotten so exponentially better and continues to get better. It was within the last 10 years that the World Health Organization recognized that being trans isn't a mental disorder. That's a huge deal. The American Medical Association defined gender as a societal construct rather than a physical attribute. Like, that's huge. There's all these advances that were made in science, in biology, and medicine that have benefited us immensely. And the culture got way better. And so, no, I don't think it would be better to go back in time.
Here's the thing, talk about the backlash. Here's the thing. Losers are always going to lose. They're going to lose this one. And they're
going to get mad about it.
They might win the election this year, but they are eventually going to lose. The losers are always going to lose, and they are losers. And the one thing I want to say to everyone here is, when the losers lose their battle against us, they're not going to go away. They'll going to pick
some other margin. They'll pick the next marginalized community.
Pick the next marginalized community.
Yeah. Or they'll invent one out of whole cloth. They'll always find someone to hate on a basis of.
And they'll just make. This might shock you based on what's been happening in the election the last couple days.
Just make stuff up.
They will just make stuff up, and it'll rile up their loser base. But they only believe it because they're losers, and they are losers, and they will lose. If there's one thing that is historically accurate, and you pick out anyone that was a loser, they eventually lose. They might not lose right now. They might not lose today, but they're losers and they're going to lose. Hitler didn't bring around 1,000-year Reich. He shot himself.
That's like 3 years.
Yeah, he shot himself in the basement. He's a loser. The Confederacy, he Gay
The
marriage.
Golden Girls was around longer than the
Yeah,
Confederacy.
the Confederacy. They're losers. Losers gonna lose. And that's the fact. And you can say whatever you want about America, and I know it's got problems and I know it sucks, but you're free to be you here. And as long as you fight for your freedom's gonna win. And like I said, it might not win this battle, but those losers are gonna lose.
That is true.
That's what we need, a cup that says that. Loser's gonna lose.
Loser's gonna lose. There we go. That's gotta go. That's our new catchphrase.
Loser's gonna lose, you know?
Make a graphic for that.
In fact, I would say before you send in a question that says someone online said this to me, whatever they say, just be like, you know what, loser, you're gonna lose.
Loser's gonna lose.
It'll drive them nuts.
Yeah, that's all you gotta say. Evelina Paula, I hope that worked out for you, because that's how we feel about it. And yeah, that's about that.
I mean, it was a great show. I think we helped people.
I do have one more jump in thing I wanted to say about it. It's kind of repeating myself, but I just want to encourage everybody that is out there that's having a rough time, and because it's the noise is loud. The noise from the haters is loud right now. They're very loud and they're very awful.
Calling them haters is too nice. They're just evil.
They're losers. The noise from the monsters, the ghouls, whatever you want to call them, the trolls, whatever. It is loud and it is scary, but it is better. Life is always hard. You're always going to have a hard time. When it gets to you, shut off the news and talk to people and go out into the world. When you buy groceries, talk to the cashier person and talk to your neighbors, whatever it is, talk to people, find a support group, go meet people, make friends, do stuff, get away from the doom scrolling, because it's like that stuff it'll get to you. It'll get to you, and it'll paint a distorted and scarier picture of the world that's worse than it is.
Yeah, that's a good ending.